Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Joe, kind of the video for today. This is a continuation of my updated in-depth guide series. We're circling back to Celestial. I kind of jump skipped it and went to some tank power sets, but we're circling back now. As per usual, in the pinned comment and in the description, you will find timestamps to each individual relevant section of the guide. So if you're looking for just the might side or single target or precision or healing, you'll be able to find those timestamps to that direct section. You can also follow along in the YouTube timestamp bar. You can actually see the actual titles broken up there. I don't think you can see it on mobile, but if you're watching on like a tablet or a PC, you should be able to see that feature. All these rotations and loadouts in this video, besides all the DPS rotations for Might, were helped out by Villain Friend, because Celestial, So I guess I should say this is probably my most procrastinated guide and the most requested guide. So I was personally unaware that Celestial was this popular as a power set. It's been definitely my most requested guide in my channel's history, even the first one. So I wasn't aware of Celestial being that important. I mean, it's always been a great power set. Since it was released in Origin Crisis, it's been a top-tier DPS power set. During the AM days, it kind of faltered a bit. Healing-wise, it's always been amazing. Right now, it's one of the best single target, one of the best supercharges, and one of the best melee powers in the game. So there's no reason for you not to like Celestial. It's just for me, I personally find it too slow because I'm used to those fast and fluid G36 days. So I mean, that's no excuse for me taking this long to release the guide, because I've had the rotation since the end of the summer. So I do apologize for that. I didn't mean for this guide to take so long to be released. It was just something that since I don't like it, I was finding any excuse I could not to put it out. So I do apologize, because that's selfish of me to do that, where I should be doing this for the community. So once again, check out the timestamps and let's get into the guide here. Okay, looking at the DPS spec for Celestial, similar to what we find in most Might power sets. We got super powered spec, critical attack chance, critical attack damage, maxing everything to might and power. In terms of iconic abilities, just robot psychic and knee venom boost are needed for melee. Not ranged, but single target, you have heat vision. Super speed, we are maxing down at the tree because we're taking Dervish. And speed drain, if you're going to use like a double Gemini build, which I'll touch on in a moment. You technically don't have to take the power innates, but it's handy. But if you're trying to save on skill points, then you don't need to. But the important ones will be definitely Dervish and Speed Drain. In terms of weapon spec, same thing. You just want something that's going to have a nice lunge. It could be shield, could be two-handed, could be one-handed, doesn't really matter. But you just need to spec the proficiency into the tree. And then you can put the rest of the skill points into health. You're not going to be weapon tapping at all really with Celestial because of the comboing with it. So you don't really have much opportunities to spec with and you're canceling Dervish with dashing combos, which is a foot mod, which I'll touch on in a moment as well. So really, there's not really opportunities for you to weapon tap at all with precision. Touching on the gear, the weapon's always going to be Blast Adapter. Head mod's going to be Supercharged Cursed Idol or Bloom or Dash Attack, not Dash Attack, Speed Drain, depending on what situation, but 9 times out of 10 it's going to be Cursed Idol or Neo Venom Boost. Neck mod's going to be Escalating Might. Back mod's going to be Berserker. Chest mod's going to be Extended Supercharge. Leg mod's going to be nothing scales, don't worry about it. You could have... shouldn't really have turret in there, but you could have Vampire Bats, you could have any kind of DPS pet trinket, Dark Contract Bat, Slayer Sunken Rune, but it's really doesn't really matter. DPS trinket, Spy Drop. In terms of hands, going to be max damage. Foot mod has to be dashing combos for melee. And artifact wise, you're looking at Transformation, a Strategist card, Granorum. Your other option as well, you can run Gemini. Now, if you're going to run Gemini, this is where you're running... I'm kind of skipping ahead to Loadout, but you'd want to run like a double Supercharge build. So Speed Drain and Cursed Idol. Now this is not going to be really viable for pugs, because in pugs you're not going to have support roles spamming Geminis. In league runs or kind of comp runs or whatever, or you're running with friends, that is a higher chance. But in pugs, really unlikely you're going to have that much spam. So then you'd want to run just Cursed Idol or like Knee Venom Boost. But if you're in those runs that have a lot of Supercharge spam from the healers and tanks, or multiple healers in a tank, then definitely running a Gemini build for that Gemini 20% proc, as well as double Supercharge, will be much more beneficial than running Robot Sidekick. So kind of jumping ahead to the loadout there, but that is, I just don't have Gemini leveled on the EU server. I have it leveled on the US server, but that is a viable alternative. And then for single target, you're going to need, you don't need heat vision, but it's an option as well. Celestial is one of the power sets that don't require heat vision for the single target, but there is a build that is more beneficial running single targets with heat vision, and like a heat vision defile. So you would need Soul Amplifier for that, but that's really the only artifacts you need. So I mean, unfortunately, it's like 5 artifacts you'd substitute, but you can get away without Soul Amplifier. You can get away without Gemini, but you definitely need Transformation and Stratus Guard. Augments. You're going to have whatever augments are relevant to your DLC or your tier. So, for example, if you're over CR 299, you're going to have the Platinum Engraving for Wonderverse. If you're below 299, you're going to have the Bronze. And whatever Origin augments you have, they're going to be Might as well. Affinity mods, you're going to have A and B are going to be Might. C and D, those are for Troll. I mean, I don't even change them really. For healing, you could change a couple. There's one that has the power reduction for your when you use a priority heal. Type D, there's really nothing. Auto Breakout gets you into trouble sometimes, like Phoenix Cannon. But there's no Type C or D mods that really scale anymore at all, especially for DPS. So just make sure you're Type A and Type B or Might. That's really anything else, just to pick up the 2%. Everything else you can do without. And that'll be the spec. Okay, so on to the DPS Might loadout, where you're going to be using Plague, and we'll be using the comboed Corrupted Divine Light, which I will show in a moment. Divine Light, we will be using Divine Light, but not be using Cleanse Plague. Takes too long, not required. Wrath of Presence, and we'll be using Consume Soul Cleansed. And Dervish, Robot Psychic, and Cursed Idol. So like I said before, if you're in a group that has a lot of Supercharge spam, you can drop Psychic, pick up a second Supercharge like Speed Drain or Bloom. Speed Drain is a bit more of a dot. Pheromone Bloom has more burst damage, so depending on how old the raid is. If it's like a newer Elite raid, you could Speed Drain. If it's like an older raid where you need some burst damage, you can run Bloom. But then you'd run like a double Supercharge build. That'll be more passive damage than Robot Psychic. But for 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using this. So, what I mean by Plague, if you're new to Celestial, tap melee, tap range, and hold melee will be the Corrupted combo. So if we do regular Plague, that's what it looks like there. But if we do tap melee, you'll see this, tap range, and that's the full version. So basically, when you see the other animations, if I do Plague and I'm tap mailing, when I do that, then I know that I've triggered the next combo phase, and then I can tap range. So hitting Plague, tap melee, I see that, I can tap range, and then I can hold, once I see that other animation, now I can hold range to go back into it. Divine Light, it's just the regular power, so you don't have to worry about that. The other one is going to be Wrath of Presence. So this one's just tap melee, hold melee. So tap melee and then hold. So the ending of the animation, so basically the tap melee you're going to see, but the hold, this can be clipped. Because it's the ender combo. It's the same thing with Plague. So this animation there, you don't have to wait for that full animation to complete. You can clip that. So in the actual rotation, you'll see I'll do Plague, and then basically clip it with Divine Light. So you can see both of them out there, both glyphs. So same thing with Corrupted Wrath of Presence. You can clip it with itself. So Wrath of Presence, tap it, and you go back into it. So you don't have to wait for this entire animation to complete like that. You can basically clip it with itself and go back into it. And then other thing as well with Dervish is going to be with the foot mod dashing combos. So Dervish, tap melee, you'll launch forward. So that's how you cancel Dervish. So you can technically weapon tap cancel Dervish, but you'll be doing less weapon tap damage even with Blast Adapter than compared to using dashing combos, which dashing combos hits AoE, and can crit as well. And with Cursed Idol, I'm going to have a specific section on Cursed Idol. You can skip to that. Cursed Idol, it's not what everyone thinks it is. Most people use it, don't see it that being effective, and then they drop in like Knee Venom Boost. Cursed Idol is one of the best supercharges, if not the best supercharge in the entire game, but you have to use it at the right time. So basically what you have to do, it even kind of describes it here at Explode and Deal Damage. Cursed Idol needs to be able to kill an ad, and then basically that ad will explode in damage all around you. So if what I mean by that is, say you have a big group of ads, you pop Cursed Idol right at the beginning, it's very unlikely that Cursed Idol is going to kill one of those ads because they're all at max health. So if you pop it when the ads are at like half health, then it's a much higher chance that Cursed Idol is going to basically kill one of those ads and proc the explosion. So that's the main kind of drawback to Cursed Idol, is that the explosion has to be able to proc by Cursed Idol death. So say you have a bunch of ads, you pop it at half health, and then the other DPS pop a supercharge, and their supercharge kills the ads. Unless Cursed Idol's dot kills that ad, you won't get that explosion proc. So it's all about timing, getting used to using it correctly. The clip I'll show you from a fellow YouTuber in Costi, you can kind of see it there in the parse. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to get used to the timing on it, but once you do, it becomes the best supercharge in the game. So for single target, no, it's just going to be an AoE one. But I mean, for example, like using the Venom Boost or not on a single target, and then you basically have a hallway boss. Cursed Idol can basically just catch you up, jump you ahead by millions in the hallway, especially in hallways like Phoenix Cannon when you have a bunch of ads all together. Not so much in Fractured Godsphere because the ads are so spread out, unless the tank is pulling them all together, like say that one section with the, I forget the one ad, the Bug General, the Bug Zapper Feet one. But in areas like that where you're pulling a bunch of ads together, then yeah, Cursed Idol will excel. But in like small situations where it's only groups of 3 or 4 ads, it's not going to be that beneficial. But in Rage with like huge hallway ads, stuff like that, Cursed Idol, does huge damage in the millions, especially with like buff trolls now with like Claw and running Tetra. So look for the timestamp in that clip to get a little bit more information about how to use Cursed Idol correctly, or what it looks like when you use correctly. But that is essentially the rotation there. So Plague, you just have to get used to using tap melee, tap range, hold melee. Divine Light, you don't have to worry about using it because it's much slower. It's just not viable. Wrath of Presence is really quick. Tap melee, hold melee, clipping with itself. And then Dervish is just being cancelled with dashing combos. So let's get into the rotation. Enjoy here. Okay, you get the gist there. Celestial, it's really inconsistent on the parsing because Celestial's always been like that. It's gonna do much higher damage in raid than it will on parsing sparring targets. Really, on sparring targets, with just being 3 targets, you really just have, if play crits, then great. If play doesn't crit, then you're gonna have like in the 80s and mid 70s. But then if play does crit, then you get in the 90s. And then with me being 318 CR and losing, a couple thousand might, because I can't wear these because the sparring target. So that's 350 might. So I'm losing 1300 might by not wearing these because of the dominance issue. So obviously those parses move up to millions in the 90s, and then in the 80s, probably mid 80s. So that's the rotation there. You're much more successful in a raid than you will actually parsing this. You don't do Divine Light to cleanse Plague. It takes way too long. They're going to be dying. It's not worth it. But Plague to Corrupted Divine Light would be the most important one. That's in a raid with like a buff troll and a claw troll. You're going to see Plague crits for like 100k. So it's much higher damage. And then obviously you've got Wrath of the Presence and Whirling Doers to finish it off. So that's the actual rotation there. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, for Celestial Single Target, we have basically 2 variations. The main variation, which is going to be Plague to Corrupted Divine Light to cleanse Plague, and then Consume Soul spam basically, and then until you restart Plague. So Consume Soul 3 times, and then restart the rotation. Wrath of Presence is on there just in case there's ads. So basically, if there were ads instead of just single target, you would use Wrath of Presence times 3 and then go back into Plague to Corrupted Divine Light. Consume Souls there just for pure single target. And then Rebel Sidekick and Venom Boost. Cursed Idol is not effective on purely single target. If there's a boss fight with a ton of ads, yes, it can be effective, but Venom Boost is much more effective for pure single target. Now, the other variation will be if you need to be max range or you can't basically reliably spam those 2 combinations, and then basically it's going to be Heat Vision and Defile. So it's still going to be Plague to Corrupt Divine Light, and Divine Light, Heat Vision, and Defile. So Defile will be the finisher, and then Heat Vision as well. So making sure for the first variation you don't need Soul Amplifier, you could run Granorum, or you can run Soul Amplifier if you wanted to. But then the second variation with Heat Vision, you would require Soul Amplifier on. So those are basically going to be the 2 variations of the loadouts for the Celestial Single Target you see. It's just going to be dependent on which raid, which will be the more beneficial one to run. Ideally, you'd always want to run Consume Soul, but some elite raids, you're going to be much more beneficial running Heat Vision and Defile to be able to stay ranged with the group. So let's get into the rotations here. Okay, so you get the idea there. Now, just before you think that's actually a melee rotation, it's not as mid-range. Just with my dominance, I'm going to be pulling the target anyway, but consume soul, and then the actual combo that you're doing. Consume soul to corrupt the wrath of the presence is actually mid-range combo. So it'll hit from range there. It's just that you're going to move forward anyway. I just wasn't self-correcting. So don't let the fact that I was right in front of the sparring target think that it's a melee rotation. It's not. It's a full mid-range rotation. The reason why I wasn't using Wrath of Presence into Consume Soul was that that's more if there was if you're a bunch of ads. Like say you're doing like the rail fight in Fractured God Sphere, and then all the ads come out, then you'd switch to Wrath of Presence. You do more AoE damage and just do that 3 times and set up the single target dots. Rather than if there's only one target, then you're better off doing Consume Soul. It's also a rotation that doesn't require heat vision. So going back to it here, I forget when I started. Right there. So despite me critting on Plague the first time for 106k, I still only got a 40k parse because there's no strategist card, there's no nothing going on. 54, 61, 62, 51, 57, 55, 60, 62 at the same time. It's... You're going to have spike parses. Like if you parse this rotation, you're going to have some of the 60s, you might have some of the 70s, you might have some of the 80s. It's all dependent on the crits. So Plague crits and Divine Light crits, then you're great. You're golden. It's just all dependent on crits. If you get that one magical parse that has a bunch of crits, as you can see here, all my crit percentages are like in the 30s. So nothing was 50%. I had one 40%er. So it's... I don't have anything that are high critical numbers. So even like my 60s, 62 was a 34, 61 was a 39, 39, 35. So like a good crit percentage, if you're looking for that spike parse, like the 70, 80Ks, would be in the 40s or even higher. I've seen 50% crit percentage ones. So, but I mean, that's completely RNG. You can't control that. So that's a rotation that you certainly don't need heat vision for. And obviously it's boosted by the fact that you're running like a Claw Troll with the buff percentages and a buff Troll running like Tetra as well. You get the idea there. That's more of like a typical maxed range rotation. It's going to fluctuate a little bit at the beginning because obviously you don't have any dots ticking, you don't have anything ticking, and it's a 10-second parse. So it's, you just have the Plague, so that one Plague didn't crit, so you're going to have a little parse. If Plague did crit there, you'd be in like the mid-40s, but I mean, that's just because of the first parse. 48, 52, 51, 45, 52, 47, 55, 51. It's pretty much all dependent on Plague critting, so that's what Plague crit 1, 2, 3 times out of all those parses. So I missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Plague crits there. So I mean that's the thing. You're gonna have spike parses if play crits and divine light crits, or you have like defile, heat vision crits, everything else. It's not crit dependent because it's really consistent, but if you want to see those spike parses of like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's where you need all the crits to go your way. But I would still use the mid-range rotation. But if you need something to do like max range, then this is what's going to be kind of just sitting, the farthest possible back you can be. Absolutely safe. It's all max range, all max range damage. Okay, in terms of a range loadout for Celestial, Celestial's max potential damage is all mid-range, so it's certainly not something I'd recommend to be ranging a Celestial. You want to always try to mid-range with like a Wrath of Presence and Consume Soul for single target. But if you have to range and or you feel safer, or you don't care about doing like the max damage, you just want to have something viable at range, this is what it's going to be for AoE. So you're going to be using Wither, and you're going to be comboing that into Corrupted Retribution. You're going to be using Plague to corrupt a Divine Light. Then you're clipping that with just regular Divine Light. You're not doing Plague Cleansed. And then using Heat Vision. So even with the, not even nerf, but with the adjustment to Heat Vision, it's still very strong on AoE because you still get the explosion, but you get all those burning dots. And then all the burning dots contribute to the strategist card. So it really helps the rotation because you've got the Divine Light dots, you got the Heat Vision dots, you got the Wither dots, you've got the Plague crits. So it really lends itself well to the strategy card in this rotation. It's probably the most important thing with this rotation, with the number of hits. So you're getting like 290, 300 hits per combo or per 10-second parse. So it's really lends itself well to the strategist card, and that's where kind of that extra damage comes from. So that's why you still use Heat Vision. If you really did want to use Heat Vision, you could technically use Smite, I guess. That'd be about the only other option you have from range. Freezing Breath is just going to be awkward, so don't have to worry about that. But everything else is like Admonishes mid-range, Blights mid-range, whether you're already using. Obviously, Wrath of Presence Consume Souls mid-range, so you're pretty much stuck with using Smite a couple times and restarting the rotation. But it still really flows really well. By the time the Wither dots stop, and then and Retribution Corrupted is the burst damage. So let's get into the rotation here. To get the idea there. With any kind of strategist card rotation, it's going to take a little bit of a wind up because obviously the initial parsing is not going to have any of those strategist card ticks. So that's why you're looking at like 229. Then once it back kind of gets rolling, you're at 200, 310, 317, 316, 312, 330. So in those parses, you're getting back up to the 1.1 mil, 1 mil, just under a mil. And then I stopped DPSing on the 86. So it's a dot heavy rotation. If you want to play it safe in the back, rely on strategist card to get your damage, then that certainly is an option available to you, Celestial. You're still, much better off going in close, but you can still hang in the back, get those plague crits, and have a dot heavy rotation for like newer elite raids or just if you want to play it safe. So that's an option to you.
Good. Alright, guys, I'm gonna assume that these ads will die in 10 seconds. Yeah! Die in 10 seconds, please. Please, die in 10 seconds. Please, die in 10 seconds. Please, please, please. Yes, si, senor. Si, senor. Is that good? Was that good, guys? Was that good? Was that a good cursed idol? I don't know. I feel like I got all the damage I could from it. If that is what I'm intending to do now. I did it! Let's fucking go! Let's go! Yeah! Fuck it! Yeah! I got the approval from Hollow. Go on, go stupid, go crazy, go stupid, go crazy, go stupid, go crazy. Yeah! Ah! Yeah, come on, yeah, he's MC, bro. Somebody fucking help him. Let's fucking go. We know how to use curse title, bro. Someone killed him. Yeah.
Okay, for the precision side, Celestial Precision is one of those things where you're not going Celestial for precision. Same thing as Light. Like, you don't switch Light so you can be Light Prec because the Might side is better. Same thing Celestial. You don't go Celestial Prec because the Might side is better. Now, there's a few instances where you use like Celestial Prec for single target primarily, just because you're always going to get interrupted or you don't have time to execute your full combos, like with Plague and Plague Decrupted Divine Light and Divine Light Decrupted Plague. But there's those situations are few and far between. But nonetheless, if you are Prec, then let's kind of go through it here. So the spec is going to remain the exact same as Weapon Expert, 20 into critical attack chance, 40 into critical attack damage, putting everything to precision, and then everything else after your primary weapon spec will be into might and power. So Iconics, Robot Psychic, and Neo Venom Boost. In Super Speed, if you are Super Speed, once again, since the might side relies so heavily on Super Speed, and Celestial just works well with Super Speed in general, then you most likely want to be this, so you can have Phase Dodge for single target access. Technically, you use Dervish on single target, or for melee, but it's not necessary. Weapons, depending on what weapon you're going to be, my builds are going to be showing you Brawling and dual wield for Explosive Shot. So we got Brawling, you want to max that down, take Shuriken Storm Mastery. So that means you have to spec the Martial Arts tree. And then vice versa for single target, you spec the dual wield tree and then the bow tree. In terms of augments, whichever max, like if you're gearing up for this episode, you're going to have the bronze engraving augments if you're part of this current DLC Wonderverse, or if you're past CR299, you're going to have the platinum engraving augments. Your bottom augments are going to be all precision as well. Your affinity mod bonuses, you want to make sure they're type A and type B are Prec. Type C and type D, really, like obviously mine are set up for controlling. Really, there's no DPS ones for C and D that are consequential at all. Like you could get the ones that auto stun or auto breakout, but even auto breakout can lead to some deaths, especially in like say Phoenix Cannon. So really, type C and type D, don't worry about it all as a DPS. If you play support roles, you can change those to be more beneficial for healing. But type A and type B are all you need for Prec. So in terms of gear, you're going to be looking at Brawling Weapon in this case. So Blast Adapter. The head mod could be Supercharge Neo Venom, Cursed Idol, whichever Supercharge you're running. Neck mod's going to be Relentless Precision. Back mod's going to be Berserker. There's not really... Technically, you could run Accelerated Blessing if you wanted for the single target build if you didn't have access to Phase Dodge. Chest mod's going to be Penetrating Strikes. Leg mod doesn't matter, nothing scales. Hand mod's going to be max damage. Foot mod, if you're going to be using Dervish at all, you want Tumbling Mastery. Or sorry, if you're going to be using Dervish at all, it doesn't matter. You can just give me weapon tapping off of it. So forget what I just said there. If you're might based, you're going to have it, but if you're Prec based, it doesn't matter. To have dashing combos. Trinkets remain the same. You just want some kind of DPS trinket. DPS pet trinket, DPS trinket. Artifacts for precision are going to remain in the meta, which is going to be Transformation, Strategist, and Gnorm. Technically, we're setting up... well, on the single target side, we're not setting up Purify PI, but on the melee one, and the melee and mid-range and range, we are with Victor's Light or Divine Light, so that doesn't matter. So for precision, looking at a melee, mid-range, and range build, it's all the exact same. It's still going to be brawling. I've shown examples where like you could use a one-handed flurry. This is going to be an example using brawling. So really, your loadout only changes if it's going to be max range. So if you're brawling using a Haymaker, same thing, you're using Admonish and Blight, which will show in the rotation. But you're always going to start with Divine Light, clip with Anoint, and then have Robot Sidekick and the Venom Boost. But if you're melee and mid-range, Admonish and Blight, but because they're not max range powers, then you'd switch to Wither and Smite. That's it. So the rotation stays the same. You're still using Shuriken Storm for mid-range and range, except that for max range, you're going to be using Wither and Smite instead of Admonish and Blight. And Haymaker, same thing, you're using Admonish and Blight. So, and in terms of the combos that we're using, Brawling Shuriken Storm for mid-range and ranged, and for melee, we're using Haymaker. So I'll show you the loadouts here, and then we'll kind of show you the rotations back to back to back, because there's no sense of breaking down the individual loadouts because it's all the exact same powers. The only difference is you'll see me take off the OP head for a Haymaker because it's going to send the adds flying because of the dominance, and then Shuriken Storm technically can leave these on. And then the main thing you have to remember is that the range on Admonish is about, I don't think it's 4 squares. No. So the range on Admonish and Blight, you have to be within basically 3 squares. And you'll hit both. So this is a technically mid-range damage. And then obviously, if you're using Haymaker, you're going to be up close anyway, so that doesn't matter. And you can see why I don't wear the OP head, because I don't want that ad flying. But then if you're max range, let me get out of combat here. And we'll pop on Wither and Smite. It's the same kind of concept. Admonish is a burst damage. Smite is a burst damage. Wither is setting up dots, so is Blight. So it's the same concept. It's just that you're using a max range ability. It's the same thing. I can be standing here. I can hit Wither. And then I can hit Smite. And that's like really the only difference. Clip too fast there, but that was just kind of showing an example. But that's the only difference. I'd Admonish and Blight for mid-range and melee, and then Wither and Smite for range. So let's get into the rotations there and show you what they actually look like. Okay, so you get the idea there. You're going to have some fluctuations, depending on crits, because the Haymaker crits are going to kind of make or break that rotation. But when you do, when did I start? I think it was that one. 75, 87, 73, 68, 70, 97, 78, 91, 80, 93, 73. So obviously you're going to have some fluctuations depending on those haymaker crits, and then how often they're happening. The one thing you have to make sure you don't do is this rotation. You kind of saw it at the end there because I was just ready to cancel it. If you tap Admonish too quickly, because you're basically going back into haymaker combo. So say if I hit Admonish and then go back into... you can see you can tap it too quickly. Same with Blight. So if you're tapping melee too quickly, just depending on what you're doing. I'm sure it's easier on PS controller. Maybe I'm just too clicky on the PS, but just I'm clicking it on a mouse. But say if you were doing the rotation, you do Admonish, and say you click too fast, you just did that second half of Admonish combo. You don't want to do that, because obviously you're wasting time, not doing any damage. So what I do is basically just pause for like half a second. So I do Haymaker, hit Admonish, wait for the animation, and then start it again. So once again, if you see yourself doing that, like if you see yourself doing Admonish and doing that second animation, then just pause. But this could be way easier on PS controller, I don't know. But I just found myself doing that sometimes on PC just because I'm clicking the mouse too fast and it registered the second half of Admonish and Blight. But it's only going to be happening in melee. So that's the only thing you got to watch for. But still, you're sitting almost at a melee, almost at a mill combo. So this is 316 CR because I had to drop my weapon. So this weapon is from Birds of Metropolis. It's 265 where everything else is 277. So I'm missing a lot of weapon DPS. And so still, you're easily looking at this rotation being above a mil, which puts it back into kind of Doomspin area. But Haymaker is obviously a lot more susceptible to interrupts and stuff like that. But still, very competitive. For the single target loadout, we have Malediction being it's a single target dot, 11.2 second cooldown. It's a little bit awkward, but I do find it being higher damage in the long run than Divine Light. Clipping that with Anoint. Because of the Supercharge used for the Might, I am using Phase Dodge for single target. Now, if you don't have Phase Dodge, you just clip with Blessing. So it'll be Malediction, Anoint, and Blessing, and then wait till that you have cooldown, and then Robot Sidekick. But that's going to be essentially it. Just Malediction, clip with Anoint, Phase Dodge, and then on the second rotation, clip with Blessing, and then basically repeat. So that's essentially what it comes down to. I mean, you can technically get fancy and use Dervish for melee for the extra ticket damage. I find that a bit excessive. I mean, it works in some content, but obviously you're not going to be able to be in melee range single targeting the boss in most raids. So, if you're doing older raids, like say Painties, single target comps, or like regular raids, stuff like that, you can get away with that and get the extra tick of Might with Dervish. But I find that just to be a bit excessive. I'd rather, the whole point of single target and Prec is be range and will be mobile, where you can't really be that with Dervish. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but you can mess around with that to get that extra ticket damage in certain situations. So let's start the rotation. Okay, so you have to excuse me. I have no idea how many of those were 4 ticks, 3 ticks, or even maybe some 2 ticks in there. Not too very often that I do Precision Flirsha anymore, now that I am Might on the EU and US servers. So pretty much the only time I'm Prec, I'm on test server to bring you these videos. So I think I got better towards the end there. What did that kind of look like? 34, 40, 49, 39, 46, 42, 49, 51. So really, I mean, this is the exact same thing with single target. You got the strategist parse ticks, the malediction dot kind of adds in some extra damage there. Robust sidekick, either whether you're clipping with phase dodge or you're always clipping with blessing. I should mention, if you're going to be clipping with blessing and not phase dodge, change your back mod to accelerated blessing. You get that 10% reduction. That's really about it. Single target is single target, flurry shot's flurry shot. Yes, the timing changed slightly in a few game updates ago in terms of how easy it is to 4-tick, but really, single target is still flurry shotting, and if you're used to flurry shotting, you're used to flurry shotting regardless. So that's what Slush will be. Okay, so you saw there's mid-range rotation just with the Blight and Admonish. And now we'll pop on to Wither and Smite just to show you the range one. Exactly the same thing in terms of rotation, just with different powers because you need max range. So you'll see like a higher range of like mid to high 70s, low 80s with the mid range, and then with the max range, you'll see some dip in the 60s, but still capable of that mid 70s as well. And then really the Shuriken Storm rotation kind of relies heavily on the strategist card proccing just because of the multi-crits. That's where you're kind of hoping for. So if you kind of saw like a damage breakdown this entire rotation, you're probably looking at the strategist card being the primary source of damage for this rotation in the long run. Okay, on to the healing side. Now, Celestial Healing really hasn't changed over the years. There's a couple now powers that you would substitute in your loadout and kind of artifacts you kind of substitute, but really the Celestial Heart hasn't changed, especially the Spec, so we'll kind of touch on that here. So as a healer, you're always going to be super powered focus, always going to be critical healing chance, critical healing magnitude, and maxing restoration. Now, you're going to have people to say, put some skill points in dominance. And now, if you've got a whole bunch of skill points, you can put some in the dominance. But if you put skill points in dominance, you could put like 100, 150 skill points into it. You're going to come nowhere close to the amount of dominance you would get from an OP item. So even the OP head, the OP legs, the OP waist even though that the OP waist is lower CR, you would still have some extra dominance on that. So really, if you have any OP items at all, there's not much point in speccing dominance. You're going to have plenty of dominance, so if I took this off, I'm sitting at 122. I could spec, 150 skill points in dom and maybe end up to like, 200, 300 dom, which I mean, that's nothing compared to 2,500. So there's really not too much you have to worry about. Yes, it's a part of your shield formula. Yes, it's a part of your healing formula. But really, it's not going to be, you don't have enough of it to make a difference. If you're a tank, then yeah, you've got like 25, 30,000 dominance, you can certainly make a difference. And as a healer, you'd have like, 40, 50,000 restoration. It's still a part of the shield formula. I personally would rather put skill points into Might and Power because you have controller meta, which has changed with the Claw Troll. So you don't have as much access to power as you would before. So you have to rely on instant, power over time only. Or like the strategist card takes if they're using that, or like the bop artifact. But really, you can't depend on like a troller spamming power for you, really, because it's going to be a claw troll. So I'd much rather have skill points into Might and Power, and then after that, I would put skill points in Health to increase your own survivability. So iconic powers, really, I would spec Pheromone Bloom just in case you're running like Eye of the Gemini artifact and like doing a Supercharge spam group. You could run like Cursed Idol, Pheromone Bloom. That's really only the reason to spec that. Super Speed, nothing's really required. You can take the movement innates if you'd like, just for a little bit extra power return, but once again, not required. Weapon spec is really up to you. There's no weapon choice as a healer. Yes, you could use like earn supercharge a little bit faster using like Hand Blaster, Solar Flame. You could have a little bit better power regen with bow, but really you could use like dual flurry shot, brawling Shuriken Storm for a little bit extra weapon mastery damage. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever your personal choice is as a weapon, because it's really inconsequential compared to the overall picture as healing. So with your weapon, you can have replenishing adapter. Head mod is going to be, it could be Cursed Idol, it could be Pheromone Bloom, depending on what you're running. Neck mod is going to be Focus Restoration. Back mod is going to be Accelerated Blessing. If you're not running Blessing, there's some situations you wouldn't if there's like shield penetrating mechanics, but still you should run a shield. But worst case scenario, if you're not running Blessing, then you'd run Accelerated Divine Light. Chest mod is going to be Power Efficiency. Leg mod, nothing scales, so it really doesn't matter. Trinkets, you got like a DPS pet if you want, orbital supply, the healer trinket, breakout trinket, it's up to you. Head mod, max damage, there's no white mods going to apply for healing here. Tumbling Master if you want some extra survivability, once again, foot mods completely up to you. Now artifacts, here we do run into some choices here. Purple Healing Ray is extremely powerful. It's one of the new artifacts that came out. It's very handy. So is Page of Destiny is also very strong compared to how often we use Admonish. So really, these are like the go-to meta healing artifacts. Now the third one is kind of where you have a choice. You could run Transformation Card. You could run Eye of the Gemini if you're running like a Gemini Supercharge build. You could still run Orb if you have that level, because Orb is pretty good at 120. It doesn't have to be a high rank like 160 or 200. It's perfectly fine at 120. You can run even the strategist card, like Soul Cloak if you want to have extra Supercharge regen. Like there's plenty of options for that third artifact. I just run Transformation in this case because the majority of their work is going to be picked up by Purple Healing Ray and Page of Destiny. And with your transformation, with everything, with more criticals, you have more critical healings, which will add up to the Purple Healing Ray in terms of its proc by healing changes or charges your Purple Ray up to 4 times your total restoration. So that means you would have to heal either yourself or the group, but you have to heal 4 times your restoration. So obviously, if you're getting criticals, then you have a much faster option to get that. So that's really my choice. Really, there's no perfect right or wrong answer for healing artifacts. But Page of Destiny and Purple Healing Ray give you the most bang for your buck, basically. And then your third one is going to be your choice, depending on what type of build you're running. Now with the Celestial Loadout, really, once again, I was saying before, nothing's really changed with Celestial. You're kind of locked into 4 powers, and then your 5th and 6th power are kind of your choices. So you're always going to have Admonish, and your main combo is going to be Admonish into Blight Cleanse. So basically, every time you hit Admonish, you're going to tap melee, hold range, so you get a group heal as well as your healing over time from Blight Cleansed. So basically, that's everything you do. Every time you hit Admonish, practically have cooldown, you're always going to set up their tap melee and hold range. And then basically you can clip that with Consume Soul. And then you can also clip that with Renew, depending on your power. Virtuous Light or Divine Light, really this is going to be your 8-man heal. But what this is that it's burst healing. So you don't want to pop this when everyone's like high health, because you're going to waste the burst of it, and then you get the smaller heal over time ticks. So really what you want to do is when the group has taken like a whole bunch of damage all at once, like say like the drones and Clock Tower Elite, like the final boss with the drones, if everyone's low, then yeah, perfect time to hit Virtuous Light, everyone gets back up, and then you maximize the potential Virtuous Light because you get the large burst, and then you get the healing over time tick. So you see a lot of healers just pop this just for the heal over time, but you're wasting that burst potential, which is the main point of running Virtuous Light. And then if you get just the smaller healing over time ticks, it's not as beneficial. Blessing will be your shield. That's basically a given. There's going to be some mechanics where there's shield penetration, so you may not run that necessarily, but really 9 times out of 10 you're going to have Blessing in your loadout. Number 6 is where you're going to see some changes. You can run Cursed Idol, which is basically really, I'll show you in a moment here, but Cursed Idol is going to be nice healing over time. Pheromone Bloom is more, if you're proccing it more often, it's a little bit burst heal. Mainly you're getting the Gemini heals from it. Cursed Idol is much more effective as like a group AoE heal. In some situations you can be running, where is it here? Guardian's Light. Did I miss it here? Guardian's Light. So some situations you won't be running a Supercharge. Like for example, I go back to Clock Tower Elite. The thing is, the Purple Healing Ray, or sorry, Page of Destiny procs, kind of negate Guardian's Light, because if your group is really, they spike low, below 40%, basically that's when the page procs and heals them back up to full. So really you get that negated by the fact that you're running Guardian's Light. But say there's a situation, that you always have constant damage on the group, like say the Clock Tower Elite with those drones, or if the Dot, if they don't have their augments up. Now that's the time you run Guardian's Light, because you're going to have more frequently group members below 50%, so you get the healing much more beneficial from there. So it's not going to be for every situation, but that's where you sub it out, because you don't always, like Sacrifice is okay, it's an 8-man shield, it's not the strongest, also it's not a shield on yourself, so then you're wasting Sacrifice and Blessing so you don't die. Concentrated Ground's okay, but it's a 10,000 Supercharge. Life Drain is pointless. Cursed Idol's okay, but it's not burst, it's all healing over time, so it's not going to be used for every situation. So really, it's going to be depending on the raid and depending on the situation what that 6 power is. But you're perfectly fine running like kind of like a Jack of all trade loadout like this, running Supercharge. If you're not running Gemini, don't want to worry about running a Supercharge, and yeah, you could run like Guardian's Light. But that's essentially your option. It's going to be Guardian's Light or Pheromone Bloom or Cursed Idol. Some unique situations might run concentrated grind if you've got other spammers in the group, but that's essentially what you're looking at there. So in regards to a Celestial rotation, like I said, the only combo you need to worry about doing is Admonish into Blight Cleansed. This is something you have to learn to do in your sleep, so tap melee, hold range. So what's that look like here? Admonish, tap melee, hold ranged. There you go. So you can see the animation. Now I have that healing over time active, and also just had to group heal from Admonish. So once again, tap melee, hold ranged, and there we go. And then once you're doing it fluidly, then you kind of clip it with Consume Soul or clip it with Renew. So Admonish. There we go. Same thing with Renew, tap melee. So depending on the situation, but that's a combo you have to get used to doing in your sleep. So we kind of, let's get myself down in health here. That's my Page of Destiny proc. So Admonish into Blends Clay. And that's that. My restoration is low. I'm sure some of you picked up the fact that I'm wearing DPS gear. It's just that on test server, I can't really buy healing gear. The only healer gear I can buy is Birds of Metropolis gear, which is previous DLC, which is pretty much less stats than compared to the Amazon Elite gear. So I'm sitting at around 45k resto, which was super low. I'm sure I know some people in last server like 60k resto. So this is limited due to test. But once again, we'll get that low. And then with Consume Soul, I've got those extra healing ticks as well as the Cleanse Blight. And then we'll show you the burst potential, just a Virtuous Light, what I was talking about before as well. So say if you're low, I get that big burst tick, and now I'm getting smaller healing over time ticks. So really, if I used Virtuous Light when the group is full, I wasted that huge burst, and I'm getting those little dot ticks, or those little hot ticks. So that's why there's really pointless to that. So you want to use a Virtuous Light when the group is low, so you get that big crit, and then you get the small healing over ticks, or healing over times. So that's the one thing I see a lot of social healers mess up. They just kind of hit Virtuous Light on cooldown, or if they see the group is almost, like not even low, but like, you know, at 80-90% they use Virtuous Light just because they know it's an 8-man heal. But you're much better off just, you know, cycling, putting dots out. And then eventually I'd have the proc from Purple Healing Ray, so I could either use, give myself a personal shield, or cast a group heal as well. And the group heal is restored by 20%, so that's why I said it's much better for power. And then obviously every time I use that, I put a stack of Page of Destiny on me, up to 10. And the transformation is just helping my criticals.